Hello and welcome to On the Road, a series which seeks to feature people, initiatives and good news stories from significant locations here in Ireland and beyond. Today we are here at the Cathedral of Christ the King, Mullingar, County Westmeath, where we will highlight for you a significant milestone in what we hope will be the path to sainthood for Jesuit priest Father Willie Doyle.
This is an historic event. It is something that many people have longed to see happen over many years. And it is also the first time a canonisation cause has been opened in Ireland in over a quarter of a century. We want to extend our deepest gratitude to Bishop Deenahan for agreeing to initiate the cause in the diocese, and to the clergy of the cathedral for facilitating this evening's events.
You are very welcome to this first public session of the Diocesan Inquiry into the life and virtues of the servant of God, Father Willie Doyle SJ. This evening, Bishop Deenahan formally opens Father Doyle's cause, and the members of the Diocesan Tribunal, which will oversee the Diocesan Inquiry, and the postulator of the cause, take their oaths of office. I now call upon the postulator, Father John Hogan, to read the libellus, the formal petition requesting the initiation of the cause.
The servant of God, William Joseph Gabriel Doyle, was born on the 3rd of March 1873. He was baptised at the local parish church, the Church of the Assumption, Dalkey, on the 13th of March. William's early years were spent at the family home in Melrose, Dalkey. The family was marked by a Catholic piety that formed the hearts and minds of the children. As a child, William was particularly precocious when it came to faith and works of charity. He was known to help the family servants in their work. He was received into the Society of Jesus on the 31st of March, 1891, at St. Stanislaus College, Tullabeg, Rahan, County Offaly. While in novitiate, he offered his life to Christ through the hands of Mary as a martyr. He was ordained priest on the 28th of July, 1907. He made his tertianship at Ronchienne, Belgium, and professed final vows on the 2nd of February 1909. He was appointed to the Jesuit mission team in Britain and Ireland, and from 1909 to 1915 carried out an intense and successful mission as preacher, spiritual director and confessor. His personal spiritual life was marked by intense prayer and penances conducted under the supervision of his superiors. In his writings, he manifested a desire for holiness, seeking to serve souls and offer his life and work as a reparation for the sins of priests. In his pastoral ministry, he impressed people with his gentleness, holiness, and gift of preaching. He published a number of pamphlets, including one on the rubrics of the Mass, another on retreats for working men, and on vocations. His writings on vocations proved enormously influential and have assisted innumerable men and women to discern vocations to priesthood and religious life even to the present day. With the outbreak of the First World War, William offered himself for service as a military chaplain. This was accepted in November 1915. William's motivation was to continue his ministry to working men, many of whom were volunteering for service in the army, and to offer himself as a pastor to these men as they faced the real possibility of death each day. In January 1916, he embarked for the front and carried out a difficult and heroic pastoral ministry. In the midst of the horrors of war, he brought consolation, hope, and courage to the men in his care, both Catholic and Protestant, and he was regarded by many as a living saint. He took frequent risks to save men on the battlefield and spent himself in administering the sacraments to the dying and burying the dead. Embracing the extreme deprivation of life in the trenches, he bore them with serenity, patience, and joy, encouraging the soldiers and teaching them the faith. Though awarded a number of military distinctions, including the Military Cross, with humility he was content to carry out his duties for the love of Christ and to be a slave to those he served. William brought Christ to the men caught up in battle. This was also true for those on the other side of the conflict. William showed the same love, pastoral tenderness, and concern for German soldiers captured by the Allies, so much so that many of them came to admire him. William detested the war, deplored the senseless loss of life, sought peace and reconciliation by caring for the souls and the well-beings of the soldiers, maintaining his wit and sense of humour. While William offered pastoral service and sacraments to Catholic soldiers, he was also concerned for the souls of Protestant soldiers and offered them what service he was permitted to do with fidelity to the rules of the Church. He was ecumenical in his love and concern for all souls. In August 1917, during the Battle of Passchendaele, William was extremely busy as casualties and fatalities were high. He was frequently without rest, yet his stamina held out. The years of penance and mortification bore fruit in making him fit for his ministry. Another chaplain was due to relieve him, but did not arrive, so William had to remain at the front and continue his work. On the 16th of August, 1917, in the midst of intense fighting in which large numbers of soldiers were killed, William spent the day on the battlefield under constant and great risk to his life, tending to the dying and trying to rescue the wounded. In the late afternoon, 2 Anglican soldiers from Ulster, 2nd Lieutenants Charles Marlowe and Arthur Green, had fallen in the heat of battle and lay wounded. William saw them from the trench, and even though he recognised the grave danger as shells were raining down upon the troops in that part of the battlefield, he ran to assist them. As he was trying to drag them to a shelter for safety, a German shell hit them and all 3 were killed outright. Immediately devotion to him emerged. This was particularly evident among soldiers he served and their families, who held him in great veneration, as well as those who knew him as a preacher and guide of souls. As news of his heroism on the battlefield spread, devotion also emerged among the faithful. Professor Alfred O'Rahilly's biography of William, which included many details of his private spiritual life, was published in 1920, running through 5 editions and multiple translations. Other biographies followed, and there were calls from around the world for his cause to be opened, and this call has been renewed frequently since the 1920s to our own day. Numerous Catholics and non-Catholics, clergy, religious and laity have been influenced by William's life, ministry and heroism, including a number of saints and blesseds whose own sanctification was marked by his example and spirit, including Saint José Maria Escrivá and Saint Teresa of Calcutta. This petition to open the cause of beatification and canonization is submitted to Your Excellency under the category of heroic virtues. William strove to reach holiness through the observance of his consecration in the spirit of humility. His sense of humour was the means through which he sought to cover up his virtues and growth in holiness, a method of self-deprecation. This humour revealed another prominent aspect of his personality, joy. Possessed of a warm humanity, never surrendering to despondency, William was a witness to joy in his life. His spiritual writings revealed that this joy emerged from a profound love of Jesus Christ, a deep union with him, and the desire to make Christ present in his life and in the lives of those he served. We believe the life and death of Father William Doyle SJ have immense importance for the Church, both in Ireland and universally. He is a good and holy model of the priestly life. He is an example of a committed religious who was faithful to his vows, living the evangelical counsels with humility and joy. He sought holiness, knowing that all disciples of Christ are called to be saints, and that holiness was the ultimate act of fidelity to Christ and the manifestation of God's will for all. William is a model, example, and spiritual mentor for those suffering with mental health issues due to his own experience and recovery from a psychological breakdown in his youth. His work for vocations is inspiring. His desire to offer his life, penances, and even his death as a reparation for the sins of priests can resonate with the Church in these times. His love and service of German soldiers and his ministry as a chaplain offered the Church an example of love for one's perceived enemies, and one who can be seen as a servant of peace and reconciliation. He is also a model of true ecumenism. The actor wishes to petition Your Excellency and the Holy See to open a cause under the category of heroic virtues. As his reputation for sanctity remains among the faithful, despite the many decades since his death, and belief in his intercessory power is strong, as witnessed by numerous people who continue to seek his prayers and help. Together with the evidence of his virtue and heroic death, we request that his cause be introduced.
So we're standing here now with Bishop Deanahan. Bishop, how do you feel after such a wonderful night's celebrations?
Well, I'm delighted it has come to this stage. The cult of William Doyle has been talked about for quite a long time. It's widespread since issuing the edict about a month ago. I've been very struck by the extent to which he is revered, really, throughout the world. And it's great to be thus far. The association has done some tremendous work, and I think you see yourself from the variety of people here and where they're from, the following that he has. But so yeah, it's a celebration of the work that has been done to date, but of course now it's in the hands of God, really, you know.
Brilliant. And considering, the recent films like 1917, what do you think kept Father Willie Doyle, going through the horror of the trenches? What was it about his spirit that kept him going through that really severe hardship?
I think, Father Hogan mentioned during the ceremony the fact that when he was in the Jesuit novitiate here, he took an oath offering his life. And I think his eyes were fixed on Christ. He saw the suffering. I mean, who can imagine the trenches, the bloodshed, the horror of it? He kept his mind fixed on the kingdom of God, today's feast, really, and I think faith in Jesus Christ and the urge to bring Christ to others, particularly to the sacraments and people in their agony, even those who are not Catholic, as it was mentioned, his care extended beyond that sort of sectarian boundary. It was seeing Christ in others and doing something for the love of Christ.
And looking into that a little bit further, because that's those are beautiful insights into his life. What does that say for the current generation? Is there a call in Father Willie Doyle's life to the current generation, considering that he administered to people of all faiths and none?
Well, I think first of all, every generation responds to heroes. That has always been the case throughout history. And we talk about Doyle having died 105 years ago. As I mentioned, his cult is still strong. That's because of his appeal. He's a hero. We respond to heroes. I think his message essentially was that we're all made in the image and likeness of God. And God's compassion doesn't stop at in terms of a nationality, in terms of a creed, in terms of a political affiliation. And, maybe that's the message we need to hear. Throughout the world, that sort of nationalism, in the broad sense, is rising. And I think Doyle extended that, beyond that. I mean, one of the more interesting things about in my homily I mentioned that quotation from a member of the Orange Order, who said that we couldn't agree with Doyle's religious persuasions, but we worshipped him for other reasons. And that's common humanity is important. When you look at Doyle, his sort of operative theology in terms of reaching out to others, making a sacrifice, generosity, in some ways it's echoed in some of the writings of Pope Francis and other Jesuits 105 years later, there is that thing of bridge building or fratelli tutti, common brotherhood. But it wasn't a humanism now. It was in terms of for the love of Christ. And that's the key distinction.
That's beautiful. And tell me, considering of the wonders attributed to Father Willie Doyle in the 1920s and 30s, has there been anything of significance as of late that has really led to this, huge interest in his cause moving forward?
I don't think there has been. I mean, I was talking to people a while ago who told me that, in the 1940s, their parents in Cork had great devotion to Doyle. I think that was probably due to Alfred O'Reilly's book in 1925. And O'Reilly was very much involved in the Legion of Mary, and the devotion spread there. His texts were, as you know, on the reading list for novitiates and convents and monasteries and seminaries throughout the period as well. The cult has endured. I mean, there has been persistent and repeated calls for this process to begin. I'm not directly involved in the association in terms of intercessory prayers and people reporting favours, but I don't know, a month ago there was a talk of somebody in South Africa who prayed for his intercession in response to somebody who was dying of COVID, and they were grateful for a favourable response. The quest for a miracle is the next stage now. That's much more rigorous, as indeed it should be. So we've got to wait and see. But I think that it's interesting. It has to be interesting that 105 years after his death, the cathedral was fairly full this evening, and throughout the world people have devotion to him. The amount of books that are being sold, reprinted, bears testimony to that. There's something enduring about his cult.
And considering we've reached this wonderful occasion tonight on the opening of his cause for the beatification and canonisation, what are the next steps?
I think that the next step is that the officials that took oaths today have to go through writings. They have to look at it from a theological point of view. They have to gather up his writings, and then a case is sent to the dicastery for the causes of saints. And then simply, in terms of significant progression, the need is for a miracle. That's to be created a blessed, or to be beatified. A miracle is required. So I think that I know people in this diocese who are praying through his intercession, and in some ways that's where it goes next. I mean, there is the work of the tribunal in terms of going through his writings from a theological, from a historical point of view and all that. That'll be done. That can be done. But in terms of canonisation, beatification, there's a supernatural element. And I think that's where the miracle comes in, and the prayer for his intercession.
Indeed. And we'll all pray for that.
We are indeed.
Bishop Dina, thank you very much indeed.
Very welcome. Thank
Good
you.
night.
Thank you.
So I'm standing here tonight with Q Comiskey. He is a relation of Father Willie Doyle. How are you feeling, Q, after tonight's beautiful ceremony?
I thought it was a beautiful ceremony. I thought it was a very formal ceremony, and I found the whole thing, as I have found this whole procedure, very moving.
And what's your relationship to Father Willie?
Obviously, I didn't know Father Willie. He died in 1917, but his sister, Lena, Angelina, but known as Lena, was my granny. And I knew her. And I also knew two of his brothers, Father Charlie Doyle, his slightly elder brother, who was also a Jesuit, and another brother, Robert Doyle, who was a High Court judge and was the last recorder of Galway.
And Q, considering that Father Willie Doyle, he experienced such terrific torture and hardship in the trenches as he administered to people of all faiths, what was it about his character, do you think, that just kept him going, and what call does that hold for this present generation?
I think he was way ahead of his time. I think the thing that isn't often referred to, it was slightly here today, was his ecumenism. It didn't matter to him what colour skin somebody had or what religion they had. As far as he was concerned, they were human beings, and he was as willing to help as you heard today, a so-called, non-Catholics as well as Catholics. I think that was one of his main attributes. Plus his undoubted courage. He wasn't a healthy man by any manner of means. He suffered a breakdown, as you probably heard during a sing, but yet he suffered all the privations and that of war. And frankly, I don't think he could have done that had he not been a saint.
Indeed. And as regards in these modern years, what do you think has really inspired in these recent years the interest in Father Willie? Because we know that many miracles and wonders have been attributed in the 1920s and 30s. But what do you think has sparked off the interest in him over this last decade or two?
I think that's a very hard question to answer, because certainly when I was a youngster, there was quite a devotion to him. Now, I'm not sure how far it went, say, as to opening a cause for beatification or canonisation. But I think people became more aware of it recently, and I think that book by Dr. Kenny, Pat Kenny, To Raise the Fallen, I think that he certainly promoted Father Willie. He was a great fan of his, and I think that awoke general interest.
Well, thank you very much. Listen, I'm glad you have a lovely night, and thank you very much indeed.
Bye.
So I'm standing here this evening with Dr. Pat Kenny, author of the book To Raise the Fallen. Pat, how do you feel after that wonderful ceremony this evening?
It's an amazing day, and I'm full of joy that Father Willie's cause has reached this particular milestone. But as somebody said to me, it's the beginning of the beginning. There's a long road ahead, but we're just happy that his cause is open, and we're delighted to get stuck into the work that lies ahead.
Can you say a little bit about your book? Because I know that you've spent such huge work bringing to life, for the current generation, all that Father Willie Doyle went through, and obviously the meaning of that, for the current generation.
So the book that I was involved in producing in 2017 is called To Raise the Fallen, and it is a selection of some of Father Willie's war letters, some of his prayers and some of his spiritual writings. And I think one of the great strengths of the book is that it's Father Willie mostly speaking in his own words. There's very little of me or very little of anyone else in it. It's really Father Willie writing himself. And when people encounter Father Willie writing in his own words, they realise what a holy man he was, but also what an attractive man he was, because he had a wonderful personality, a wonderful sense of humour, and his heroism in war shines right through. One of the things about Father Willie is that he was an expert spiritual tactician. In other words, he was really focused on small little ways that each of us can take in order to grow in holiness. And in the book we've covered a number of those points and pieces of advice that he would give to priests but also to lay people.
Beautiful. And tell me, considering some of the war films that we've seen, like 1917, Saving Private Ryan, what was it about Father Willie Doyle that kept him going through the mayhem and torture of the trenches?
I think it was ultimately his holiness that kept him going in the midst of all of that. I mean, he was involved in some of the major battles of the First World War, including the famous Battle of the Somme, for which he was awarded the Military Cross. He had trained himself over many, many years through prayer and penance, and this strengthened him for what he encountered in the war. That's really the secret to his success: prayer and penance, trust in God, and constant union with him. And
can you say a little bit about, he wrote in his diary about his desire to be a martyr, and that seemed to be so demonstrable, if you like, on the battlefield.
Yeah, so Father Willie, when he was about 20 years of age, made an offering of his life to Mary as a Jesuit martyr. And we know that this influenced his entire life, because even 2 months before his death, he refers in his diary back to the offering of his life he had already made. He wanted to be a saint, he wanted to be holy, and he felt this particular call to be a martyr. He also felt a call to a hard life, to a life of penance. So we see this theme running throughout his entire life.
And considering that Father Willie Doyle ministered to people of all faiths and none, what does that call hold for the current generation, that level of spirituality?
So Father Willie is a great model of ecumenism, because we know that he died while saving 2 Anglican soldiers. So we live in a very, very divided world. We see those divisions in Europe right now, and we live also in a very fractured and divided society. And it's fine that we have our own strong opinions and hold to them, but what Father Willie teaches us is the universality of love, the universality of charity, that even if somebody is seen to be on the other side to us, they're also a child of God, and we're called to love them. Father Willie loved them, and he laid down his life for them.
Beautiful. And tell me, what is next in the process? Obviously, we've this wonderful ceremony tonight. What lies ahead of us then?
So what lies ahead is the diocesan phase of the process, where there will be an inquiry into Father Willie's life, his ministry, his writings, and a panel of theologians will also investigate his writings. And if they approve of his writings and the diocesan phase reaches a successful conclusion, then the case will be sent to Rome and a positio will be written, which is a very, very detailed account of Father Willie's life and his virtues. And when that's written, another panel of theologians in Rome will investigate his life and virtues, and if they deem that he lived heroic charity, then he would be given the title of venerable, and after that then we would wait for a miracle for beatification and a subsequent miracle for canonisation. We don't know if we'll reach that point, but we really hope that we will. But even if we don't, or it takes a long time, the very fact of engaging in the process is itself important, because it's really an act of evangelization. Telling Father Willie's story is an important piece of apostolate, because so many people are attracted by his spirit, by his holiness. We live in a very skeptical age, an age that's skeptical about the church and about priests. And here we have a priest who loved everyone and who was willing to lay down his life for others. So telling his story is a very important piece of evangelization.
And we'll certainly keep the next stages in our prayers. Dr. Pat Kenny, thank you very much.
Thank you, Aidan.
Well, that's it from the Cathedral of Christ the King here in Mullingar. We hope you enjoyed this episode covering the opening of the cause of the beatification and canonisation of Father Willie Doyle SJ. In Ireland, we're not renowned for praying for the canonisation of the Irish men and women that have died and gone before us. I hope that you'll be inspired to pray for the canonisation of Jesuit priest Father Willie Doyle.